All right. Welcome in to the Iowa State Fan Perspective, as always, brought to you by the Play the Fight Song College Football Show, where you give you guys a weekly college football show each and every single week. Thanks for joining in. If you're new to the show, click subscribe, click the like button on this video. We bring you Iowa State content each and every single week during the season and some videos throughout the offseason. My name is Jake. If this is your first time tuning in, happy Sunday. If you're tuning to us live on YouTube, happy August. College football will be played this month. I'm joined by my brother Justin. He's always my co-host each and every single week when we dive into this stuff. Today, guys, I think this is going to be a fun episode for your Sunday. We are going to jump into the actual schedule and we're going to break down wins and losses. We're going to go about each and every single game, what I think is going to happen, what Justin thinks is going to happen. So this is going to be fun, kind of bouncing off ideas and how we necessarily see this season going. Fall camp just started, so I think it's very appropriate. Justin, how are we doing today?
Good. It's damn hot outside. Just counting down the days till fall here over here.
Yeah, it could get a little cooler. I will say I'm keeping myself cool because I got to give a shout out to one of our co-hosts to Play the Fight Song, Camden Parks. Got married yesterday. Awesome to celebrate those guys. And if you're watching us live here, Cam gave me this cup. He gave all of us groomsmen our team represented cup. So I got a podcast cup now, and I also have a tailgating cup with the Size Roost logo for those who are familiar from the Ames area who've spent maybe too many hours at Size Roost watching football games. My favorite memory, Justin, maybe you have more memories attending Iowa State at Size Roost, but mine is watching the Iowa game 2 years ago at the bar. I think you were there. You joined me there, didn't you, that day?
Yeah, you were at my house, dickhead.
Dude, some things, geez, throwing me under the bus already. You remember all of these games. You remember where you were. I don't remember being at people's houses. I remember where I was for the game, though.
No,
That being said,
yeah, that was a good time.
is that the best bar as an Iowa State student? Is that the best bar to watch a game if it's an away game? Obviously, if you're not at the actual game.
Yeah, I would say so. Estos is up there. Estos usually shout
Mm.
out them. They usually get a pretty good atmosphere, but you get like the whole Cyclone atmosphere at Size, and you just can't beat it. I mean, remember after the game they started blaring "Sweet Caroline" and like people were throwing their drinks and stuff. It was awesome.
Yeah. You would like this. Last night at Cam's wedding, last song we played out was Sweet Caroline for a Husker wedding. We went out to Sweet Caroline. We went out to the Cyclone song. I know that I knew Parks. That was the first thing he wanted on his wedding was to end it with an Iowa State song. All right.
Smart man.
We got a lot to get to. I'm excited to get started. We're going to go over some brief notes because, like I said, fall camp just started for most teams around college football. Just a few quick tidbits and takeaways before we dive into the actual schedule. I want to talk about players and personnel. I think Matt Campbell said in his press conference this week, the one big takeaway, and you can take away a bunch of things when he's out on the podium talking this time of year, but he talked about Kennard Snyder, the defensive end from Louisiana Monroe. Why I want to highlight this is because he said he's a special player. He's really excited what Kennard can do for the defensive line this year. We have questions on this group, and we'll get to that at the end after we break down the schedule. But I wanted to highlight that because I think Kennard can be an NFL-type guy with Tyler Onyedim. Also, Onyedim's not how you pronounce his last name. It's Onyedim. Found that in the press conference as well. You learn something new every day. But that's a group and a guy that I'm really excited to watch this year. We'll dive into that more towards the end of the podcast. Kyle Conrady, the kid from the walk-on from Dubuque, will be presumably the kicker this year. We were kind of wondering who it was going to be after Chase Contreras graduated last year and after having a successful year after transferring in from Nebraska. He talked about his range was up to 50 or 60 yards. So he's setting the standard pretty high. I know Iowa State fans can be pretty harsh on kickers. So I'm not sure if I would be going out there and saying I can kick from 60 yards before I've kicked my actual first collegiate live game kick. But if he can, good for him. We're going to have to wait till August to see that. And then Jaden Higgins, the one pull away from his interview, he said it. So we're going to talk about it. His goal for 2024 and the team's goal for 2024 is a Big 12 title. So when you ask Matt Campbell in a press conference this year, and he said the Big 12 title is the goal, I don't think he can shy away and say that it is not because the players are reiterating it. And I think that's where we should get started when we break down the schedule. Justin, any thoughts on just the expectations that the players are setting for themselves before we get into the schedule.
I mean, I think that's pretty fair. I mean, do we want them to come out and say that making the Big 12 championship and winning the Big 12 championship isn't their goal? I mean, what'd they finish last year? I think we finished 4th in the regular
Mhm.
season in the Big
Yep.
10. So, I mean, naturally, if we're going to progress higher than that, that's the next standard, bringing back a lot of the same guys. So, I mean, if we're naturally going to get better, I mean, that's got to be the next step for them.
I think so too. I want them to say that. I'm more so throwing it back to you,
Absolutely.
but it's kind of funny from where we were in 2021 when you were a quote unquote college football playoff dark horse in the 4 team. You were the top 2 to win the Big 12 that year next to Oklahoma, but we went out and said, we want to be the best version of ourselves. That was kind of the speak that they really wanted to. They never really said Big 12 title was our goal. Now they're not shying away from expectations in 2024. Campbell talked about in his press conference, he's learned obviously from 2021. So that was what I thought was nice to see.
Which, yeah, I agree with that. But I think internally, like the mentality that Campbell has and the mentality that Campbell brings to the team of getting better every day and being the best version of ourselves is still like what this Iowa State team is going to be and what they're going to bring under Campbell. Like, I don't think that's changed. I just think maybe the way they're projecting it's changed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about it. How does Iowa State get back to the Big 12 title? How do they get back to Dallas? Let's look at the path here. Let's look at this schedule. We're going to go game by game. I know we've broke down the schedule like early in February and stuff like that, but we really haven't given our thoughts on which games we think we're going to win and things like that. So I think this will be fun to start. I think we can all agree that we can eliminate the North Dakota game from our conversation. That's probably the next episode we will drop for you guys. It will be North Dakota week, kind of overlaying the whole season. And also, we get to talk an actual opponent that we're going to be seeing at the end of this month. Iowa State opens as a 27.5-point favorite, speaking right now on August 4th. You see that at the bottom there, that we have the lines on the North Dakota game and the Iowa game. Our odds to make the college football playoff and the odds to win the Big 12 are both at the bottom there as well. So let's move on to week 2 at Iowa. I don't want to associate these guys as casual fans, Justin, but let's just go out and say it. There are a lot of casual fans who sometimes are okay with losing every single game, but winning this game against Iowa makes their whole year. Those are people who probably never grew up in the state of Iowa, or maybe are just attending Iowa State now. And obviously it's the Cyhawk game is massive for the state. That being said, there is expectations for both schools to be a college football playoff dark horse. I can even throw Iowa in there. I think if things click for them offensively, they're going to be good enough defensively. We know that, to get them in that conversation. Iowa State opens up as a 2.5-point underdog on the road. Justin, before I give a prediction first, what are your thoughts on this game? And give us a win or a loss.
Yeah, obviously you get a lot of mixed opinions when you get Iowa State fans talking about the Iowa game, especially with the tragic past that's happened within this game the last couple of years and beyond all that. But just like we touched on, like at the beginning of the podcast, that day at when we were at Size, like I know the game doesn't mean that much in the grand scheme of things of us like winning the Big 12, going to the playoff, things like that. But that was definitely one of like the most happy that me and you have shared an Iowa State football game
fun.
with. And we tried to like, I mean, obviously we tried to like let that down and not talk about it too much until it happens, because it hasn't happened very often. But like even that day, that was like the year after COVID and the year that didn't seem to go all too well. People were losing their freaking minds and names. Like I remember people were just like running around in the street and like losing their minds. So like obviously this game means a big deal to the team, but it's not like the end of the world in the grand scheme of things. So I'm just hoping that, I know it's on the road and it's going to make it a lot more difficult than playing in Jack Trice, but I hope that we get to see a version of this team like we did in 22 when they just went in and played free and played with nothing to lose. If we're going to continue to play scared against these guys, which I don't know if it's been the play calling or like, I don't know if I'd say the players have played scared, but it just feels like Iowa State's just kind of had a timid nature about them going into this game, trying not to lose it, because that's kind of how Iowa's defense is. They kind of strangle you to the end of the game and they make you hand it to them. If we can go in there like we did 2 years ago and play not scared and just play to win, I feel like this team could have a really good shot.
So that being said, What do you think? Do we have a shot? Do we win this football game?
If I had to bet my money right now, I wouldn't bet on us winning the game. And that's I mean, that's not like a shot at us or anything like that, but just playing on the road and playing in Kinnick is tough. We haven't really seen this team go all out like that. I kind of think that 22 team was kind of different with the way they played and the way Deckers kind of played. I mean,
Yep.
you just go back to that 99-yard drive that won them that game, and Iowa kind of handed Iowa State a lot of freebies that day too. And I'm not sure that's going to happen again this year. I'm sure they're going to be looking at that game too. So they're going to try to take care of the ball a lot more. So it's just going to be tough to get a road win like that. I wouldn't be surprised if they pulled it off, but it wouldn't necessarily be something I'm expecting.
So I'm chalking you up for a loss is what I'm assuming.
Right now, I'd say so.
That being said, okay, you're usually the optimist of this podcast. I guess I will take that role today. Going back to 2022, I think the excitement also from winning that football game in Kinnick was also this losing streak that was snapped. I think it was 6 or 7 in a row. Just
true.
to get the monkey off that back that year was huge. Last year, Iowa State went into that game with zero expectation. I think a lot of people thought Iowa State was not going to be even a bowl game team last year. I'll raise my hand up and probably put myself in that conversation as well. But I see some similarities in that 2022 game and this game as well. I think Iowa State plays better in Kinnick. Just the fact that for some reason there's like some dark cloud that's over Ames anytime Iowa comes and plays at Jack Trice Stadium. So you got that going for you. I love the similarities between Rocco this year and Hunter Deckers in 2022. I think you're going to see a lot of play calling similar to that. Last year, it was Rocco's second game. We were really unsure with what we were going to get out of Rocco Beck. We knew Hunter Deckers was a gunslinger. Rocco, they were kind of pulling back the leash a little bit for him. And you can tell with that, especially when he throws that pick 6 to Castro. But this year, I think he's got all the confidence in the world. I think they're going to play carefree. They're going to let Rocco throw it around a little more. And Iowa with the new offensive coordinator. We said this on the podcast the other day, the actual Big Ten preview. I just told JP, I just don't believe that Cade McNamara is healthy. I mean, I just saw another video of him yesterday, and he's got maybe the biggest knee brace on in all of college football. It's pretty disgusting. He looks like a robot. I'm sorry. Did that help? Did that increase anything last year? I mean, he was basically playing on one leg, and they were able to get the win against Iowa State. So does that matter completely? No. Does the offense clicking matter for Iowa State to win? No, because Iowa's had poor offenses in the past, and they still find ways to win 9 or 10 games. So that doesn't matter. But that being said, I see some similarities between Iowa State's win in 2022 and now. Jaden Higgins could be the Xavier Hutchinson who stepped up and made big plays down the stretch. He's kind of come into his own. So the national narrative and the national reporters are actually, they're on Iowa State's money line right now. So I'm going to back them up. I'm going to trust them. History says otherwise. And I can't say right now in August. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. So one of us has to pick Iowa State.
Well, you made me say it now.
So we're going to go 2-0 for Iowa State from myself. Justin's at 1-1. Arkansas State, we can chalk up a win for that. 2 reasons. The defense was much better with Ohio last year, much better than what this Arkansas State team is going to bring to the table. Obviously, being a home game helps that much more. Arkansas State has an underrated offense. They are one of the best passing offenses in the Sun Belt. So that'll be interesting, but I don't see Iowa State struggling offensively against this team. They're one of the worst in college football on defense. Let's go to Houston. So I'm at 3-0 right now. At Houston is interesting to go on the road in your first Big 12 game, but I think you're lucking out in playing a Houston team who's seen as one of the bottom 3 teams in this conference right now. Willie Fritz comes over from Tulane. Somebody made a good point yesterday, the other day, and when I heard that, I am glad we are getting Houston this early because Willie Fritz is a really good coach. Like you can see Houston fighting and scrapping in November and maybe winning games they're not supposed to. I'm glad that this is going to be the first conference game for him. I think Iowa State defensively is going to rattle them, but it's also a weird road game where the attendance is going to be low. Houston doesn't pack football games. So, but that being said, I like this situation. I mean, Justin, you're not going to say they're going to lose this football game, I'm assuming.
No. So I mean, just what you said, being able to go on the road, first Big 12 games, never ideal, but like having a young team like this and like a new team in Houston, I think you couldn't really ask for a better spot to be in.
Awesome. So I got 4-0. You got 3-1. We got Baylor at home. A lot of people are chalking this one up as a win for Iowa State. fair reasons. I think that this team will definitely be favored when Baylor comes to town. Dave Aranda takes over the defensive calling duties once again, just like his days at LSU, because this is a top 5 coach right now on the hot seat on some of these preseason lists. So the pressure is on. They bring in Daquan Finn, the MAC Offensive Player of the Year last year from Toledo. He's going to be the quarterback for him. I like that option. I think Baylor needs more mobility at the quarterback position. They have some good running backs back. Here's the deal, though. I think Iowa State wins this game no problem because I think this defense is poor. It's tough to say now. Some of these Big 12 teams are going to surprise us during the year, but this Baylor defense is not good. It's one of the reasons why I think Dave Aranda should have been fired last year, and he probably will get fired for it this year. It's going to be on him now that he's calling the plays, but I am not scared by this Baylor defense coming in to Ames, especially for a first game in October.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Aranda. Like 2 years ago, when Baylor was in the Big 12 championship against Okie State, I thought they were going to be a problem for us for a while. So, I mean, seeing the state of their program now, you never really want to count them out. But just like you said, with the caliber that we're expecting of our offense, especially at home, that really shouldn't be much of an issue for us with where their defense and where they're at right now.
Perfect. All right. I'm on the same page. I think a lot of Iowa State fans are following along with us so far. Now this West Virginia game starts. You travel to Morgantown, which Justin and I will be at on October 12th. Very much looking forward to doing that with those guys and getting a first glance at this Iowa State team who could potentially be 4-1, 5-0 heading into that football game. We'll have to wait and see, but this is going to be a tough road trip. Morgantown always is. It's one of those sneaky road trips in college football, and it really has been since they've joined the Big 12. This is a good football team. I highlighted this team as my dark horse in the conference. Great backfield with Jaheim White, with the Donaldson kid, Garrett Green back at quarterback. Offensive line has 3 starters and is probably one of the better offensive lines in college football. Iowa State struggled a couple of years ago. Brock Purdy's senior year, they got beaten apart in that football game, and that team was not good for West Virginia. So weird things can happen on this road trip. This is really where it gets interesting. Before I give my prediction, Justin, what's your win or loss in this football game?
I think we're going to win this game. I mean, I think Iowa State and West Virginia are in pretty similar spots going into this year, both coming off of kind of being the underdog teams in the conference last year. But I just think Iowa State's got a lot more staying power to have success this year. I know a lot of people kind of see him as an underdog, or as a dark horse, but I kind of see West Virginia where Vegas has them at that 7-5 line. I know Iowa State kind of struggled against the pass sometimes last year, especially because of lack of depth. But I think this West Virginia team really relies on the run, and that's not something a Heathcock defense has really ever struggled in stopping. And I think that's going to have a lot of success for us there.
I'm going to go loss, just primarily because it's a tough place to play. And for my prediction, I have us 5-0 at this, or 5-0 at this point. I don't know if Iowa State started 4-0 at school history.
We'll take that out of it. If you didn't know we were going to be 5-0, do you think we would win this game just on its own?
I think this is just a spot. Yeah, if Iowa State's 5-0, I don't see us I think it's a tough spot. I don't think Iowa State comes out with a victory. If West Virginia is healthy and they're playing the way we presumably look at this team and the way that they should be playing when we're talking about this in August, I think Iowa State is going to lose that football game in a tricky road situation. It's a young football team still, even though we bring back 85% of production. It's still a really young football team. Rocco's a sophomore. Abu's a sophomore. There's going to be some bumps in the road. This still could be a great season, but I've got to throw some realistic bumps in the road on this schedule. So I like both of us sitting at 5-1 in the middle of October. I think we can both sit there and maybe agree with that.
I agree with that, but just looking at West Virginia and looking at Iowa State, there's nowhere in my head where I can't say West Virginia is going to be a better football team than Iowa State is. I know they had a better record last year, but I think that was very circumstantial with some of the bumps that Iowa State was going through and some of the schedule breaks that West Virginia had. I just really think we're going to match up pretty well against these guys. And I know Morgantown's a really weird place. That last time we were there was probably the biggest ref hoax job I've ever seen with Brock Purdy's senior year. I don't think I've ever been more mad after a football game than after that one. So I suppose if it's going to go a similar route to that game, then we'll be in trouble. But I just think the way we match up with these guys, I think it'll put us in a really good spot.
I cannot disagree with you there, but we're going to both be sitting at 5-1 heading into UCF, traveling to Ames for the first time in school history. UCF, one of the newcomers in the Big 12 in the last couple of years. Really, really good offensive team. I don't think some of the even Cyclone reporters understand how talented this team is offensively. UCF brings in KJ Jefferson from Arkansas. He was the Arkansas starting quarterback for 3 years. You get RJ Harvey, who was a really good back for them last year. They bring in Penny Boone, who was one of the best running back transfers this year. Kobe Hudson, Xavier Townsend. Those are 2 receivers that are going to be really good for them. I love their skill positions. That being said, I think Iowa State is going to be an underrated defense in the Big 12 this year. At home, I love this spot for Iowa State because I can see it being a weird line where Iowa State's only favored by 2.5 at home and everybody's on UCF. I think Iowa State gets them in this situation because you have all the weapons at UCF. I got to see it with the offensive and defensive line. Malzahn is grabbing a bunch of transfers right now, trying to make it work. And maybe they are a home run. And we look at this in September, and we're like, man, UCF is that they are really good on every aspect of the ball. Right now, they were poor last year on the line. So I think Iowa State's defensive line is going to wreak havoc and give those receiving threats even trouble and get after KJ Jefferson. So I have a win there. What do you have?
I also have a win for us here. And I know it's funny because I know you were saying at the beginning that I was usually not the optimistic one, but I've got us undefeated through conference play so far here.
Yeah.
I think if you were to tell me this was going to be a road game, I'd give UCF this one. But because it's in Ames, I just feel a lot more confident about it. I still think they're a new team to the conference, and their only conference win last year was a 2-point win at Cincinnati, I believe.
Yep.
I think them just coming to Ames will be a really big support for us. And just like you touched on, I think our run defense should be able to at least handle them. And hopefully our pass offense is able to have a lot more success being at home rather than being on the road. So I just have a hard time seeing us dropping one of those home games as well.
We're going to know a lot more about that team when they travel to Ames because they travel to TCU and at Florida a couple of weeks prior to that. So we're going to find out what we really get out of that team. The bye week comes at a great time after that UCF game. And then this is when it really gets interesting. This is where me and Justin, I think, could have some disagreements depending on what we got. Texas Tech comes to town November 2nd. I have this as a for sure win, just only because I don't think people know about Behren Morton, the starting quarterback for Texas Tech right now. He's like having some labrum issues, and I don't think he's been like full go even through spring practice. Like he can't figure it out. And every national podcast that I listen to says the same thing. They have some serious question marks about Morton right now. Some people are pretty high on the backup and think that he could be good enough. Even if that's the case, I don't think a backup quarterback is going in for Texas Tech and winning in Ames. So that being said, I'm banking on that Morton is not fully healthy and Iowa State should win that game. No problem if that's the case. I'm assuming you don't disagree with me.
Yeah, looking at it in August, it should definitely be a W for us, but you never know in the Big 12. I mean, hopefully this isn't a trap spot for Iowa State coming off the bye, being a homecoming game with those Kansas, Utah, and Kansas State games coming up. But I mean, if they're going to be a team of caliber that we think they're going to be, this should be an easy win for them at home.
So we got 7-1 heading into the middle of November. October's been successful for Iowa State, so at least we can bank on that history under the Matt Campbell era. It's always been successful in October, and November is kind of where it's been shaky, and it could get shaky here. They travel to Kansas City, not Lawrence. Iowa State will be playing Kansas in Arrowhead Stadium on November 9th. Here's what I have to say. And Parks loves to give me crap because I am a Kansas hater. That was last year. I changed my mind every year because there's a new football team going into 2024. I think this Kansas football team is really good. Jalen Daniels should be healthy. If Behren Morton's not going to be healthy, I'm just going to say Jalen Daniels is going to be healthy. We're not going to get back-to-back injuries at quarterback. I don't think we get that kind of luck. I just don't. And if Jalen Daniels is healthy, the win total for them is 8.5. I think I had them in my Big 12 prediction. I didn't want to be a homer and have Iowa State in the Big 12 title when we covered that on our other show. So I'm going to stick to that. I think Iowa State loses going to, even if it is a neutral site game in Kansas City, I think Iowa State fans will travel well, but I love Kansas's offense. We saw it when Jason Bean came to Ames last year, and they handled us just fine. That Arnold kid who had that 75-yard touchdown last year's back, Devin Neal's back, Daniel Highshaw's back. They're very confident with where the offensive line is at right now. There's just not really a weak link on this offense. And I think that's a group that could give this Iowa State defense trouble. So that's a road game I have Iowa State losing.
Yeah, it's hard to just chalk it up as a win, especially after the last year's performance we had against them. I was at that game, and that was just like one of those ones where they just kind of snatched the soul out of us in Ames.
Yep.
That was really tough. Like, it wasn't one of those games where I was like mad, but I was just like, damn, they just outplayed us and were better than us. And it's kind of hard to see that script being flipped next year, especially if Daniels is healthy. But that was one of our games where I don't remember who was missing in the secondary. It might have been Verdone.
It was Verdone.
Verdone was out that game, and our secondary was noticeably worse. And I think this is going to be telling. Well, we're going to be a ton of games into the season, but that's kind of going to be one of our first like legit passing attacks that we're going to face. And if hopefully the secondary is still healthy by November. But that's going to be kind of the big showing and kind of the big what if for me is, will our secondary be able to hold up against teams like Kansas? And I mean, right now on the road, it's kind of hard for me to chalk up a win for us. So I'll probably say a loss for now, but definitely something that I'm looking forward to and seeing.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those games, right, where it's like, if this is going to be that Big 12 berth and getting to the college football playoff, these are the games you have to win if you're going to be a legitimate team in that conversation. Right now, we got Iowa State losing, so that's fine. I think we're at 7-2. You get Cincinnati at home. I'm not high on Cincinnati. Other people are. They think that Cincinnati's heading in the right direction under Satterfield. I don't think he's a very good football coach. They get the Sorsby kid. I just don't. He wasn't great at Louisville, and I mean, at App State, he kind of turned it around, but I haven't seen it in Power 4 level football anyways. And they like the Sorsby kid from Indiana. I think he is an upgrade from Emory Jones, but it's not going to be a difference. Like, this will be a 5 or 6 win team, and they're not going to win in Ames. I'm assuming I can chalk you up for a win for that as well.
Yep.
Okay. We'll move on because these are the two biggest games of the year. Iowa State gets a very favorable schedule, by the way, for the first 10 games. So if anybody has any complaints about ending with Utah and then Kansas State, like, Iowa State should take care of business in the first 10 games if they deserve to be in the conversation when they travel to Salt Lake City. I don't think there's any argument there. So if you do have a gripe, keep it to yourself. Iowa State.
If you look at some of the Big 12 schedules, though, some other teams got some pretty lax schedules compared to this one.
Like Oklahoma State, who Iowa State doesn't get to play this year. Also, a butthurt about that. At Utah, November 23rd. This is a massive game. I love how they put this late in November, assuming that these two teams could be in the contention for the Big 12 title. Loss. I don't even think there's an argument there. I don't. Rice Eccles Stadium is
no argument.
Reese Snyder, as our co-host Reese Snyder says, it is one of the toughest places to play in college football. I think it legitimately is. The home record says it itself. Kyle Whittingham is one of the best in all of college football with just veteran head coaches. And this defense is going to be the best in the Big 12. Utah's defense is scary. It's legit. And I don't love the idea of Iowa State trying to beat this defense on the road at Rice Eccles Stadium. So for that, I think Iowa State will lose this by double digits at this point.
I don't know if I'm going to get on board with seeing any of our games ending in a double-digit loss this year, but we're obviously pretty unfamiliar with Utah and how that's going to go. But I'm kind of looking at this game like it's going to be the Iowa game, like on steroids. If we're playing in Utah, November 23rd, it's going to be cold. Assuming we're going to be like we're assuming we're going to be like 7-2 Big 12 contention. That's going to be such a high stakes game and such a tough place to play where, in early August with a young team who hasn't proved it yet, not really sure you can go in and say they're just going to go ahead and take care of business there. You kind of got to lean on the pessimist side, but you never know. You never know, like, who's going to be healthy by that time of year, what the weather's going to look like. I mean, we thought the K-State game was going to end poorly for us last year, and then that kind of snowstorm really helped us out. So, I mean, there can be a lot of variables in it, but right now you definitely got to chalk it up as a loss.
The favorites to win the Big 12 right now is Utah. Cam Rising coming back for his 7th year. At his best, when he's healthy, he is a really good college quarterback. I don't think he'll probably find an NFL team, but he's a really legit college quarterback. Backup is Zach Wilson's brother. He's a freshman there. So that
Oh,
could be
really?
something to note if we run into that. I don't think they were really bad with Bryson Barnes last year offensively, with Rising not being the guy. So
They still won like
injury
9
luck,
games.
injury luck. Offensively, I'm saying, I'm sorry, they were just not very good, but that would be winnable if we get another injury luck. Like, you get 4 games late in the year where you're not even sure that starter could be around at this time. So interesting to know. Let's go to the last one. Farmageddon won't be played in Ireland this year. That will be in 2025. This will be Iowa State's last home game of the 2024 season. Avery Johnson comes to town for the first time, in which I'm assuming Iowa State will be familiar with him in the next few years. And he could be one of the best players in college football, especially or in the Big 12 conference. I'm really excited for this matchup. I wish he would have played last year in the snow game. I see this as a big revenge spot for Kansas State. I think if the weather favors well and it's not snowing a bunch and it's just cold and it's ground and pound and it's like physicality, I kind of favor Kansas State in this football game. And I think that this is a top 2 team in this conference for preseason favorites for a reason. Looking at the roster, they lost a lot in the secondary, but I think the guys they did keep around are really good. And then I just really trust DJ Giddens in the run game for Kansas State. Iowa State's run game could be really good, but it's a wait and see. I know Kansas State's run game is going to be really, really good, and they're pretty confident with what they have in the receiver room this year. So that being said, I like where Kansas State's confidence is at. Maybe I should stop listening to Power Cats or whatever that is and try to look at it from a different perspective. But I like Kansas State, and that hurts me to say this year. So I'm going to end the season with 8-4. I think Iowa State's going to lose this game at home.
I do think Kansas State's a really good team, but I also kind of think the hype on them is getting a little carried away. I know a lot of people are chalking them up for like an 11-1, 10-2 type season, which I think they're good, but they're still pretty. I still think Avery Johnson's pretty unproven. He had a couple really good games last year, but there's a reason towards the end of the season they moved away from him and just went with Will Howard, because we haven't seen him like provide a consistent pass attack yet. And I'm going to go ahead and say last game of the year, weather, all of that, like in Ames on the road, like I would like to see them have like a viable pass attack before I'm going to say they're just going to come in Ames and win. I mean, these games are always really close, and I know K-State's really good up front, and that revenge factor is going to be there. But like, this is a rivalry game. Like, it's not like Iowa State's not going to show up for this game. Like, they know how much it matters, especially the last game of the year. I don't really see that playing into much of a factor, and I just have a hard time seeing another team coming in and just kind of manhandling Iowa State at home. So I'm going to go ahead and say Iowa State's going to win this one.
That's a great point. And I didn't touch on it. Offensive line going to be really overhauled. So maybe that's where Iowa State can get after him this year if the defensive line is as good as we got. Cam throws it is at the bottom for us. Awesome. So we got myself. I am 8-4, kind of slipping in the month of November for Iowa State. I think they start off really strong. I have them winning the Cyhawk game. Justin has us losing the Cyhawk game, but finishing 9-3. I think that would be really exciting for fans. I think fans would be really excited about that. Over 7.5 wins. If you have that in your, if you have that bet slip placed already, I'm pretty confident to say that they could get there, barring some sort of catastrophic injury. But that's what you get into when you put in a futures bet like that. So Justin, I know already has the over at 6.5. Didn't you get that in January?
The day it came out.
Look at you. You are a sharp. You are.
Well,
sharp.
it was just unrealistic.
I love the optimism. even when we knew nothing about the transfer portal in the month of January or where the team was going at that point. All right, let's wrap this thing up. We have some questions on this team that we'll finish up quickly before we get you guys out of here. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, click the subscribe button. We have great Iowa State, Iowa, Nebraska content, and we give you College Football Weekly show each and every single week. So we cover some great stuff. Justin has a great hat on. We're also partnered by No Rivals brand. Use the code PTFS, play the fight song in the checkout line to get you free shipping for all of those awesome hats. They're coming out with an Iowa hat. So fans, we've got to support them. We got to let them know that Iowa State's going to be purchasing their merch. They can't just have the other team on the other side of the state. We got to show some love and know that Iowa State would rep a great fan base. All right. Last segment before we get out of here, we have some questions on this football team. I think Each of us will give maybe one, maybe two, depending on what we got for time here. I can start us off, Justin. Now we've broken down the schedule, everything clicks right for Iowa State. What are some questions that we have for this team? My first question is, can this be statistically the best defense in the Big 12? And what has to happen? Iowa State ranked in the top 3 last year in almost every major category. But I would say that being said, they ranked kind of in the bottom in tackles for loss and sacks. So we've talked about it a billion times with the defensive line. It's just got to be better. And that's why I wanted to highlight the Kennard Snyder piece that Campbell talked about today. We need an edge rusher. Tyler Onyetum and Kennard Snyder, Blake Peterson. These are guys that are going to be massive in roles of getting after the quarterback. So that's my first question. I think they can do it. I think even with a lack of pass rush like we had last year, this can still be a top 4 defense in this league. It's still just going to be really stout, but I need to see us with more pressure. Justin, what do you got for your first question on this team heading into 2024?
Yeah, my first question is kind of on the same line of defense that we talked about. And I said, does our secondary have the depth to go a full season? And just like we touched on in that Kansas game earlier, two of the games that stuck out to me most at the end of the season last year, as we came on strong but then kind of faded, was that Kansas and Memphis game where they just picked us apart in the secondary. And part of that kind of goes into the getting a pass rush, like you said. But if our secondary is going to need to hold up, if we want to be a team that can compete in the Big 12 late into the season, I know in a Heathcock defense, I touched on that in our schedule breakdown as well. We typically fare pretty well against the run, and we're pretty solid at linebacker, so that's not really something I worry about. But if a guy like Jeremiah Cooper or Verdone goes down, is our secondary going to fall apart again, kind of did last year?
Yeah, that was somebody asked that question in Matt Campbell's press conference today, and he was like highlighting the secondary. Is it your best group? He didn't say it was his best group. I think that's kind of implied if you really watched and pay attention to this team, but he said, can this be our most consistent group? He's like, I don't think it was very rare that we got Jeremiah Cooper, Malik Verdone, and Beau Freyler on the field all at the same time, not injured. He's like, so can it be a consistent group? And who can step up if it's not going to be there with the consistency of injuries? And he was talking about, like, I know it's kind of a cornerback position, but you got a guy like Darian Porter, you got Javonte Williams, Drew Surgis is another guy at the safety spot. These are guys who had to step up last year. I think struggled in some key moments, but I think that's going to be their benefit this year. I think this is a group that's like 6 guys deep, which is awesome. So I would love for Coop and Verdone to be healthy the entire year, because I think those are both first team all Big 12 kind of guys. But if not, other guys got to step up.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a massive piece and a great question that you should have for the defense this year. Justin, go to your last question kind of before we get out of here. And I think everybody kind of wants to talk about it.
Yeah, obviously this has been kind of a point that everyone's been talking about all off season, is the quarterback Rocco Becht. But I think everyone plans on him making a jump, but what kind of jump will Rocco make this year? Obviously last year was his first year. He got thrown in the fire and all that. And by the end of the year, the offense was clicking. But now with Shieldhouse gone, new OC in, a lot more is going to be put on his plate. We got a couple more receivers in the transfer portal this year. So there's a lot of mouths to feed on this team too. And a lot of that's going to fall at the feet of Rocco. So I'm really interested to see, like, what kind of jump do you expect him to make? Like, are we going to be talking about him as maybe just like a top 3-4 quarterback at the Big 12? Or is it going to be kind of like after Brock Purdy's like second years, like, is he going to be talk about like fringe NFL prospect? Because I think if this team's going to win 9-10 games, that's honestly the player he's probably going to have to be, which is kind of an unfair thing to put on one man. But like, I think if this offense is going to click like people think it's going to, that's the kind of play we're going to have to expect out of Rocco.
Yeah, and I think that he will definitely see some of that pressure and that expectation if we just broke down the schedule. If everything goes according to plan and you're like 5-1 in the middle of October, everybody's going to know who Rocco Becht is. I mean, I think a lot of the national media already knows who Rocco Becht is. They know because he was a Big 12 freshman of the year last year on the offensive side. So everybody's starting to know his name. But once, the casuals in the draft, the draft guys start to pick up on Rocco, I think that's when you're going to see like the expectation and the pressure and the eyes on Iowa State, quite frankly, start to ramp up because, like you said, I mean, it's funny to look back, and Brock Purdy was a projected like first or second round pick after his freshman year, fell off. Maybe they should have stuck to that. That's a story we'll tell for another day, but I can definitely see a similar situation because he plays such a pro style kind of position right now where he's, especially the offense that Iowa State runs, where he's relied on making a lot of RPO reads and just making quick, easy, and efficient throws. So I think it all depends on how does Iowa State start. The Iowa game is huge. I think that he could really make a name for himself because it is a CBS nationally televised game this year. I think that the Big Ten moving towards a CBS broadcast, I used to be the SEC slot, man. It's going to look really, really weird having Brad Nessler be on the call for Iowa State in week 2. It's something I don't think I would have ever seen in my life. I know Parks is going to see some stuff with like Nebraska being on CBS. It's just bizarre. It's like the modern day of college football that we live in. But I'm just really excited for the national coverage Iowa State will get in that football game.
And it blows up even more when it comes from the quarterback play. And I think just like we said with everything else, it's going to fall at Rocco's feet. And we've talked about all offseason about like how much is this team really going to run or like dig into the pass first type offense. Mm-hmm. And I mean, realistically, if you look at the other Big 12 teams, like if things go to plan, what's stopping Rocco from being the best passer in the conference this year, like statistic wise?
Yeah, absolutely. Don't disagree with you there. We always talk about Nico Maliava this year and all the hype surrounding around him, the quarterback at Tennessee, because of what he did to that Iowa defense. The conversation could be the same about Rocco if he has success against that Iowa defense on national television this year. So that game could be a huge springboard for him and the entire Iowa State team heading into 2024. Justin, that was fun. Before we head out of here, we don't want to get into a bunch. Is 9 wins and no Big 12 title game a disappointment? I got to ask because it was brought up on 2 guys named Chris the other day, and Chris Williams was talking about it.
No, I don't think so. Like I laid us out as going 9-3. And if we go 9-3 and say those losses are to Kansas and Utah, like I said, if Kansas and Utah end up making the Big 12 championship, or a team we don't get to face, or like it's out of our control, like an Oklahoma State or an Arizona, like pops off, like there's nothing we can really do about that. But like we kind of handle our business and keep improving, like Campbell says, like you can never complain about 9 wins. I mean, at the end of the day, we're still Iowa State. It's like, what the hell, 9 wins? It's still pretty good.
We're still Iowa State, and I would say that would probably still get you in the top 25. And
I think that's kind of a thing about college football today too. I mean, you win 9 games, you need to be pretty happy unless you're like a Bama or an LSU or a Georgia or something like that. 9 wins is a good college football season.
You heard it from here first, Iowa State fans. Don't get your hopes up too much. We want to put you into a reality check, but we still want to have some fun along the way. 2024 should be a fun season for the Cyclones. We will be back later this month when we get actual week 1 preview with the North Dakota Fighting Hawks. I think I got that right. Subscribe to this video, like this video. Appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, we got some win totals coming out on our college football show this week at Play the Fight Song, coming out on Wednesday. Use the code PTFS at No Rivals brand for free shipping on an awesome hat. Thanks guys once again for tuning in. We'll be back very, very soon with real football talk. As always, that's Justin. I'm Jake. Thanks once again. And as always, go Cyclones.